Hello guys, welcome to my vlog. So we are watching the Russian Revolution TV show for the Cold War today. So we're watching right now and see what we think. Ready? Start!
For which he had really received very little training.
Just a week after his father's burial, Nicholas married Alex of Hesse, a German princess who would become Tsarina Alexandra. Her background would prove challenging for the Romanov family during World War I. But Nicholas's enormous problems as monarch...
This is the Russian Evolution TV. So we're watching it today. So just keep watching. And it's May 26, 1896. Start this person.
And the government had arranged for coronation mugs and little bags of goodies to be given out. The fencing and the gates were all wrong, and so when the crowds pressed to receive their goods, there's a terrible crash. Some 1,500 people died, and that was a terrible tragedy.
And many people have deaths.
There was a party at the French embassy, and he didn't want to go to it, but he was persuaded to go to the event. And it was forever held against him as deeply insensitive. He had to rely on his ministers to advise him, but fundamentally from day one, the job of being Tsar was pretty much agreed and dictated by his wife. She was very entrenched in the concept of autocracy and there to find right.
Nicholas was struggling in his new role.
And they're coming downstairs from being up there.
Lenin had been captured by the authorities and was charged with sedition. In 1897, he was sent to exile in Siberia.
On February 1st.
Which would often be a far less challenging experience than might have first appeared.
Essentially, quite pleasant time in his seats. He had his wife with him, he had his mother-in-law, he had a monthly allowance on which he could keep a cow, and a serving maid. A maid of 12 who paid 1 ruble a month and kept her in a sort of cage under the stairs. So much for Bolshevik egalitarianism.
He writes home saying that he's ice skating and shooting and maintains this phenomenal level of correspondence.
And this man has a beard, right?
Now that really stretches across the Russian Empire and beyond to Europe.
Keep going on.
Once we were there, we were
Okay, good.
in Russia, people never felt that prisoners were to be avoided with a friendly chat with the murderer. People used to go to the prisons at Easter as people go to the zoo to feed the animals. It was not a bad life.
Lenin's exile ended in 1900. He would soon begin
In January 1st.
Europe, where he would meet other Marxists and dissidents who were planning the downfall of the Russian monarchy. But for now, Lenin and his agitators seemed insignificant. There were far more pressing concerns. The Russian Empire was surrounded on two sides by rising military powers. To the west, Kaiser Wilhelm, under whose rule Germany had been unified in 1871. To the east, Emperor Meiji, whose restoration of Japan in 1868 had forged another rapidly industrializing state. The first battle would be with Japan in 1904.
And these are the ships firing the missiles. As there's smoke coming out by the ocean. That's the Europeans. They have flags. January 22nd.
The Russo-Japanese war was very bad for morale because the Russians were trounced and our fleet was destroyed. And that didn't help the Tsar in his bid to be popular.
A war being lost was a mixture of embittered soldiers and sailors whose lives had been just thrown away in a hopeless war against the Japanese, an appalling, disgraceful defeat. Coming home, finding that factories weren't paying properly and so on, there were shortages and there was general disarray. And it was an opportunity to disaffect the soldiers to organize themselves.
The response to the civilian unrest and demands for reform would be brutal. Imperial troops opened fire on the protesters. The events of Bloody Sunday, as it came to be known, would damage Tsar Nicholas's reputation forever.
Like they shouldn't be using children.
The Sunday massacre was in some ways typical of Nicholas II's reign, but either he had to have much more sense, or he needed a good spin doctor. He had neither.
The revolutionary parties are all caught off guard by 1905. He printed Bloody Sunday. It was clear
Keep going on.
It's going
Listen for
disastrously.
more information.
There was no real sense that Russia had reached a kind of turning point.
This was a spontaneous protest that then ended in a bloodbath because the Tsarist authorities attacked the protesters. He wasn't there when the troops opened fire. He just
Go on.
responded very badly. He sensed that he was getting less popular, and when he became known as Nicholas the Bloody, he started to spend most of his time at the Alexander Palace in Tsar Square, Ceylon, which is about 15 miles away from St. Petersburg. He realised there might be a threat of assassination.
1905 had been a dreadful year for the Romanovs, but the protest did eventually die down, and crucially, the Russian armed forces remained loyal to the throne. A peace treaty was declared with Japan, with a deal brokered by US
September
President
5th.
Teddy Roosevelt. Lenin and his accomplices across Europe.
See, they're bringing each other any presents, and they watch as soldiers.
Out of nowhere, it seemed that the revolution
And there's the soldier army,
was occurring
and they have flags, and they're walking over.
in power, and although a parliament called the Duma had been set up in response,
And these are the
it was
workers
flawed from the beginning,
of the
and it
Soviets.
lacked the ability to veto any and all legislation.
There had been anger, resentment, and also they were losing a war against Japan, and that was a big, profound shock to the system, and that changed the middle classes' view about the kind of political system they had.
Go on, Victor.
Substantially, that they're so useless if you lose a war against Japan. That had a really profound impact.
Lenin says that my generation won't live to see the revolution. That there is this sense that this was like a one-shot deal, and we weren't organised enough. We weren't able to give direction and purpose to what was a sort of spontaneous, popular uprising.
Lenin, even right up to
Okay.
1917, was quite despairing that revolution, as his vision of revolution, was ever going to actually happen in his lifetime. So 1905 was kind of a dry run for what might come later, but it wasn't planned as a revolution.
For now, the Tsars
They're focused and walking
come to an end, and the revolution
as they hail soldiers
but it was not to last.
of the
In
Soviets.
50 years, both the Romanov family and the Ulyanov family would be introduced to figures that would prove critical in Russia's future. For Lenin, it was a Georgian named Joseph Jugashvili, later to be known as Stalin. Although
The man of steel, Stalin.
was unimpressed.
Lenin was the leader of that Bolshevik section, was already, the top man of his party.
You see, this is all about the Russian of the Soviets, so we're gonna watch some more.
View of non-Russians, so important this wondrous Georgian. Stalin was regarded as extremely useful. He was also a good thing. He never refused to do anything.
I think that's going to the end.
Happy to kill and to rob. He never balked at anything. He would do things.
Yeah, it's going to the end.
In fact, Lenin was admired that about Stalin. He was tough, so he had a quality of intimidating people, and above all, he hardly ever talked, unlike Trotsky. That's why Stalin and Trotsky never got on.
The man of steel, right?
Secret was to be far less knowledgeable, far less intelligent than he really was. He understood a lot of languages. He was an extraordinary judge of character. Stalin's secret was not to find the strongest people to work with him. The strongest people that were to succeed. He always chose the omega male. He had his sort of allies with him, and he knew how to make people feel they needed him.
A year later, when they met again, Lenin couldn't remember anything, so he couldn't remember the meeting. But he made himself very useful.
They're getting a lot of information here about the Soviets. And this man has got a long beard.
The Romanovs were also about to come into contact with a mysterious figure from the fringes of the Russian Empire, Rasputin.
The Soviet Empire.
His only son Alexei, the heir to the throne, had been diagnosed with haemophilia. The Tsar and Tsarina were searching for anyone who
And it's all blurry of the black.
The only figure who was capable of doing so.
He met them initially at a tea with the so-called Black Sisters, the Montenegrin princesses, Militsa and Anastasia, who had invited him to Militsa's palace for tea. Then it was several months afterwards that Alexei fell and was bleeding badly, and they thought of asking Rasputin to try and heal him, and he did. But the questions always remain as to how he cured him, or even if he did, or whether he just calmed the Tsarina down because she believed he was a man of God. There's also an interesting thing that aspirin is beginning to be used as a painkiller, and Rasputin was always very against medication, and he recommended they not use aspirin, and that might have helped. If Alexei had not been a haemophilia, history could have been quite different, because it created such resentment, the invitation of Rasputin into the imperial family, that in itself helped bring about the downfall of the dynasty.
Rasputin's presence would cause scandal in Russia.
This man's got a long beard too.
Rumors began to spread about the exact nature of his involvement with the Romanovs.
First of all, he was kept a secret, and the press was forbidden to mention that you would immediately made him think there was something terrible going on. Until about 1912, when press restrictions were to abolish in Russia, it was impossible to stop the papers printing everything. And then Rasputin sold papers.
See what he's saying?
Journalists absolutely loved him. He was followed. We had all sorts of stories. Restaurant owners, prostitutes about his behavior. Police would sell their stories to. He became a sort of news-making phenomenon.
In 1911, there were letters disseminated around by the
So they moved on to the next year.
Notes to Rasputin from the Tsarina. You know, I kiss you warmly, things like that.
But still going to the end.
Rasputin's presence was bringing the Romanov family reputation into ruins. But in 1930, the chance to repair some of the damage seemed possible.
On February 1st,
300 years of Romanov rule, and huge tercentenary celebrations were planned that would hopefully boost public morale. However, yet another assassination attempt would soon undo everything.
of June 28th, 1914. See, they're shooting at each other. The Soviets.
World War I was about to begin. Russia's failure against the Japanese.
But before is World War II.
He would not survive a defeat against the Germans.
The Germans already had the British and the French to cope with their enormous empires of Indians and Algerians and so on, and that very soon the Americans would come into the war. You would have thought Russia had it, but the Russian army was a peculiar army in that the officers were enthusiastic, but the soldiers were not. The soldiers had been maybe part of the defeated army. Most of them had nothing against the Germans whatsoever. They considered them as an enemy. The corruption in the civilian area where no boots were produced, no rifles were produced, and so soldiers were told to go in and pick the first rifle and pair of boots off the corpse and front it. There were desertions and murder of officers and so on.
I think that it was generally considered a disaster when he decided to take over.
All the different soldiers are walking together as they are getting together for the World War
And that did
of the Soviets.
and Rasputin in charge.
And there's Miss Welch and Mr. Stein. And there's the different soldier sides I saw.
And an even bigger decision was he put himself in charge of the military strategy, which was terrible mistake, because once it goes wrong, he's the only one you can blame. And there was a stalemate on the Eastern Front. The Germans had already occupied large tracts of Russia. There was absolutely no will amongst the army to carry on desertions on a massive scale. There was almost no way for Russian military.
The winter of 1916 not only saw the chill of inevitable defeat for the Russian army, it also saw a shocking and painful loss for the Romanovs.
December 16th, 1916.
Certain members of their extended family would not tolerate Rasputin's influence over the Tsar and Tsarina any longer.
There was growing resentment within the Romanov family among the relatives who were absolutely appalled at Alexander's close relationship.
And there's Miss Rappaport.
Believed all the gossip as well. And it reached a point where they were saying, well, not only we got to get rid of Rasputin, this evil Machiavellian influence, we've actually got to get rid of her and lock her up in a nunnery. She was causing a lot of trouble.
It was the aristocrats who felt that Rasputin was bringing the whole
Which
world
almost sounds like
down.
Aristocats.
One of the problems here was that nobody knew why Rasputin was always going to court, and it was
And there's
just
that
a pure
woman again.
boy.
She's
Alexei.
talking.
But because nobody knew that Alexei was ill, nobody could tell the aristocrats why.
There's the soldiers with a child.
Rasputin was blamed as being a German agent who convinced he was giving advice to the Tsar to make peace, at least with the Germans. So a conspiracy was formed with the connivance of many people in the government.
Two of the assassins both left quite detailed memoirs and descriptions of the killing. There are quite a few discrepancies in both the memoirs. He ended up in the river, but he was tipped over a railing, and he ended up with a lot of wounds on his face and head, and nobody's quite sure whether it was beaten up or whether it was trying to transfer the body.
The plotters were incompetent, they didn't know how to handle guns, they couldn't even kill him efficiently. And eventually it took 3 bullets before they finally killed the poor man. It was an ignominious way to get rid of Rasputin. At the time, they were greeted as national heroes. Everyone thought they'd saved Russia by killing Rasputin.
Rasputin's time at
So I
court
meant to say this.
in brutal fashion.
We're in the movie room right now to watch the Russian Revolution.
Just as in 1905, during the disasters of the Russo-Japanese War, civil unrest was about to break out in Russia. The historic city of St. Petersburg
As a home movie theater.
the February Revolution. It had been renamed Petrograd, literally Peter's City, in 1914, as St. Petersburg had been thought too Germanic a name at a time of war. But the new designation did nothing to contain the revolutionary fervor that was unleashed in the city. It soon became so overwhelming that Tsar Nicholas II was forced to step down.
March 15th, 1917. As they're hailing themselves.
He didn't quite accept how bad the crisis was. He had this passivity and resistance to crisis. He had to be driven to abdicate, and he finally did. But the Tsarina always believed that had she been with him, she would have been able to dissuade him from...
See, I just saw these soldiers.
He was doing a kind of grand gesture.
Look at them.
Russia.
They're talking to each other.
It was done out of a genuine love, a country.
And
Nicholas having vacated the throne, a power vacuum was created in Russia with 2 major factions in Petrograd fighting for control. On one side,
they're just
were the
fighting
faction of
people.
workers and soldiers known as the
And they do have
Petrograd
horses.
which soon counted Leon Trotsky as a member. On the other side was the Russian Provisional Government, which had been quickly established by ministers who'd served under the Tsar. They would move the Romanov family to Siberia for safekeeping, but soon, nowhere in Russia would be safe.
Yep, not anymore.
The provisional government represents a kind of vision of a sort of liberal Russia where you have a community of citizens who are given equal rights, but you're probably trying a kind of liberal order based around representative government, The Soviet represents a very different kind of Russia.
The provisional government made a half-hearted attempt to continue with the war, but because it couldn't come to a decision, it couldn't get the economy going, it couldn't satisfy even the house price of bread and so on. So more and more dissatisfaction.
Lenin was in Zurich at the time. Someone entered his rooms in his lodging house and just said, "Have you heard there's a revolution?"
There's that man with the glasses.
And he wants to get
And there's the soldiers, there's the building, there's the sand, there's the horses with the soldiers, and they're running with the horses, and they have weapons, and they have flags as well, just like I said.
Lenin was in a difficult situation. In order to get from Switzerland to Russia to take advantage of the February Revolution, he would have to travel through Germany, with whom his country was at war. A complicated deal would have to be brokered.
I would say it wasn't Lenin.
And there's March 28th,
kind of inducements from the Germans
where the soldiers gather up.
But now he was less scrupulous. He had the famous sealed train through Germany, and the German point of view, it seemed like a perfectly reasonable tactic.
Lenin didn't make the deal. Lenin never got his hands dirty. Lenin never directly did something that might be
And there's that woman again.
The deal to get him and his cohort of followers back to Russia when revolution broke was negotiated by intermediaries.
There's the snow
Journey up through Germany, across to Sweden, all the way up to
of the Soviet mountains.
That train deposited Lenin.
And there's April 16th, 19th, 17th.
Turn up with a small group of people to meet him and arrest him on the spot. But they couldn't get around to it. They were incredibly inefficient.
Lenin's genius, when he arrives at the filling station and gives a speech from the armoured car, he calls for all power to the Soviets. And that's not a call for direct democracy rather than representative democracy. That's a call
Democracy's
for
ideals.
much more brutal, exclusive vision of a revolutionary future in which everyone who was on top before
Revolutions.
The dual power
That's the word.
Everything had to be agreed by the Soviet and the provisional government, which led to
Soviets.
Lenin was very, very good at using this. He was incredible.
I'm seeing the words
black arts and propaganda.
of the subtitles.
He loved the revolution, this part of the revolution.
The Bolsheviks do nearly overplay their hand. You know, in the July days, they do try to stage an uprising in Petrograd, and it is crushed.
In the middle of July, Lenin is charged with treason.
Like between the beginning and the end.
Money that the Bolsheviks accepted from the Germans. So he's under arrest, and he escapes to Finland, and is out of the country for quite a lot of a while. Then comes back and insists there is no power in this country. Let's take over the railway station and the post offices, and power is ours. It's there for the taking. Take it from the street. We can do
October 31st, which is Halloween, 1917. See, that's Halloween here. When they have all soldiers gather around as costumes and have weapons to destroy the people, and then going to war.
That would last until 1922.
And this is all Halloween.
the Bolshevik Revolution, and there wouldn't have been a second revolution. And he pushed and pushed and pushed his...
And they're taking their own purposes
Very, very reluctant, because they were scared of being shocked, or they're scared of being...
when considering going to war.
The spark that week or that month that led it, it was Lenin saying, this is our chance.
Lenin's regime is a government that's born in war. So it's helpful to think about the period, I think, from 1914 to 1921 as one of continuous warfare. The Bolshevik Party at the beginning of 1917 is about 20,000 people. By the end of the Civil War, it's about 1.3 million.
Civil War, like Captain America, ethical.
Whose formative administrative experience has been in the army. They are militarized in their psychology.
The actual revolution in Russia initially was very much in Petrograd and, of course, Moscow. The way in which it took hold across rural Russia.
Moscow, Moscow.
And violent. And there were horrific.
Violence, like saying bad words.
Rampaging across estates, burning the manor houses down, slaughtering the occupants, killing all the cattle owned by the landowners. It was very savage.
The resistance took too long because most of the army and the navy were so demoralized they came over to the Bolsheviks.
Navies, you mean, right?
They were very, very happy to go around the hospital shooting ministers. There was a general murderous feeling.
And the soldiers are giving them tickets. And there is the man of Turkey.
Becoming the most powerful man in Russia. He'd agreed to an end to the war with Germany with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and his new secret police were commencing a strategy of violent repression that would become known as the Red Terror.
Red Terror.
The Romanov family were being held in safekeeping by the provisional government. Attempts had been made to send them into exile, but the efforts were to no avail. Soon, the Tsar, his wife and children, and his last remaining staff were captured by the Bolshevik forces and sent to Ekaterinburg, where they were kept in strict isolation.
July 17th, 1918.
1918, the family were awoken.
Yep, he just said it.
The basement of the house.
And that scream is from Green Goblin Spider-Man.
This once all-powerful dynasty had authorized the execution of Sasha
When he punches him in the fire.
But now the tables had been turned, and the Romanovs.
And so does the ancient shield, the girl who froze in glass.
They had 11 assassins for 11
And
people to be shot. And when it came to it, I think the assassins were quite drunk. And nobody wanted to shoot the children. So they shot the
yep,
entire time.
no showing children.
And the children had a most horrifying death you could ever imagine or inflict. And that was thought about by their loving parents, just indirectly over the years.
Who could have imagined that those innocent children would be murdered? This was why it was so horrifying when it happened. No one ever imagined those children would be so cruelly murdered.
There's no peg trail, but we pretty much
Still
know
going to
it
the
would never
end.
happen without Lenin agreeing to it. No one was going to kill the Romanovs without Lenin's say so.
Yep, no killing.
Nicholas II's mother, the Dowager Empress,
Yeah,
was
she's
able
a
to
woman.
escape the carnage on a ship leaving from the Crimea, along with other members of the extended Romanov family. But the dynasty that ruled Russia for over 3 centuries had come to a vicious end. By 1922,
See the
civil war
flags
in the
are
country
marching
also
down,
reached its
and there it is too,
conclusion.
and the big flag, and the soldiers of the Soviet Union established.
Lenin began cementing power as soon as he started. His organization was so good that he had the common soldiers and sailors, and above all, he had the secret police. He had Trotsky, who I think the real genius.
And they're gonna let them in as they wait, and they're marching down.
With Trotsky's military genius and Lenin's organization and subversion, I think he consolidated it all the time.
He absolutely used terror. Not only that, he was very, very good at lying. He was very skillful about building majorities and building brief spoil to him.
After the revolution, people were saying,
Like lying is not telling the
the
truth.
Constitution and all that, but we still need a firm Tsar as well. They kind of wanted the two. They couldn't quite disassociate themselves. It's this idea that the protective, all-embracing Tsar who looked after the nation.
There is always going to be this tendency towards...
Like they shouldn't be using knives or children. That shouldn't be allowed in the war.
So there is always going to be this kind of tendency tendency towards a sort of degeneration to ever more absolute power.
But Lenin would not hold on to this new position for long. He suffered a debilitating series of strokes and died on the 21st of January 1924. Joseph Jugashvili, now known as Joseph Stalin, saw an opportunity laid out before him. The Russian Revolution of 1917 changed the world forever. The Romanovs had been usurped, and the largest country on earth was a communist state. The man who would become the most powerful dictator in history was now cementing his position.
As it is, we're still at the movie theater right now, and we're watching the credits. It's just to watch credits, so we're gonna watch them. See, this is a short movie. Which is like 49 minutes. Or less than that. And it becomes black. And then there the music ends. So, great job. So, good job narrating. So, I'm leaving the vlog for today. So, that's enough. So, bye. Peace out.